In the summer of 1518, residents of Strasbourg, France, suddenly began to dance. But this was no ordinary dancing. This dancing was non-stop and continued for weeks, collecting more victims every day. No one knew why this was occurring, and no one knew how to cure it. The dancing mania continued into September, when, suddenly, as quickly as it came, it stopped. No one knew how it began. No one knew exactly how it stopped. And the answers to these questions are still puzzling historians and scientists to this day. Was it mass hysteria, food poisoning, demonic possession, a religious cult? It's unclear, but this disease that may have left hundreds dead in its wake is now referred to as the Dancing Plague of 1518. It was July 1518. A woman named Frau Trophia walked into one of the streets in Strasbourg and without accompaniment started to dance, but never stopped. Sometimes she would collapse from exhaustion only to pop right back up and continue this strange ritual. After a week, she finally collapsed for good and stopped dancing. It should have ended there. But Frau Trophia would only be patient zero in this epidemic. Within that week, about 36 had joined her in this unnatural dance of death. Within a month, that number would grow to be over 400. This epidemic puzzled local authorities, with them asking, why is this happening? Can something be done about this? What's the solution? Unsure of what steps to take next, the city council conferred jurisdiction on the epidemic to the Physicians Guild. Their prescription? More dancing. With the solution pathway identified, the council began refurbishing all guild halls to host the dancers. Musicians were brought to play for them, and other non-affected dancers were provided to accompany them. But this only caused things to become worse. The ploy backfired, as the dancing epidemic only spread further, claiming more victims. With their efforts wasted, the Strasbourg City Council realized that they were only fanning the flames of this epidemic. It was this realization that caused them to reverse tactics, which they started by banning public dancing. Strasbourg Chancellor Sebastian Brandt wrote about this decision, stating, "When sadly, at this time, a horrible episode arose with the sick, dancing persons, which has not yet stopped. Our Lord Councillors of the 21st turned to the honor of God and forbade, on pain of a fine of 30 shillings, that anyone, no matter who, should hold a dance until St. Michael's Day, in this city or its suburbs or in its whole jurisdiction. For by doing so, they take away the recovery of such persons. The only exception is that if honorable persons wish to dance at weddings or celebrations of First Mass in their houses, they may do so using stringed instruments, but they are on their conscience not to use tambourines and drums." Unfortunately, the epidemic had spread far too much, as this law would have little effect on stopping the plague. And with the guidance of the Physicians Guild providing no real help, the residents and council began looking for alternative solutions. But to understand these solutions, we need to dig a little deeper into the surrounding culture at the time. Up in the mountains, near the town of Saverne, lay a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus. Born in Sicily around the year of 290 AD, Saint Vitus lived during the Diocletianic persecution, the last great persecution of Christians during the Roman Empire. The son of a Roman senator, Vitus would be predominantly raised by his tutor Modestus, who taught him Christianity. According to his legend, Vitus would perform miracles, angering his father, who, in retribution, would beat him. After failing to convince him to renounce his faith, he resolved to end his son's life. Fearing what would come, Modestus and his wife took Vitus and fled to the region of Lucania, now modern-day Basilicata. They were quickly caught and were taken to Rome by order of Emperor Diocletian. Hearing of his miracles, Diocletian hoped that Vitus could heal his son, who had been possessed by a demon. Vitus successfully exorcised the demon. The emperor, being grateful, insisted he worship the Roman gods. His faith unwavering, Vitus refused, and Emperor Diocletian threw him in prison and tried to torture him, but strangely, none of his methods would harm Vitus or his companions. Eventually, Vitus and his companions were saved by angels and taken back to Lucania, where they would quickly die a peaceful, calm death. Oh, and Vitus was either 7 or 12 when he died. Not a particularly happy ending. Now you may be asking how the story relates back to the events in Strasbourg, and the answer may seem surprising. Following his death, Vitus' story would spread across Europe, and he would eventually be named as one of the 14 Holy Helpers. Each of the 14 Holy Helpers were believed to have their own patronage, representing specific afflictions they could intercede for, and St. Vitus's were epilepsy and chorea. Chorea is described as a disorder characterized by involuntary, irregular, and purposeless movements. In modern times, it's described as a symptom of other diseases, such as Huntington's disease or Sydenham's chorea. During the Middle Ages, though, it was called St. Vitus' dance. At this time, people believed St. Vitus could heal them, so they went to his chapels and shrines when they were sick. And with this knowledge, we can now return to Strasbourg to discover how their epidemic would come to an end.
In the year 1518 AD, there occurred among men a remarkable and terrible disease called St. Vitus' dance, in which men in their madness began to dance day and night until finally they fell down unconscious and succumbed to death.
From the beginning of the epidemic, the clergy had been blaming the disease as the wrath of St. Vitus, describing it as a message from God. The people had been unholy and corrupt, and the dancing was a punishment for the town's sins. To cure this, the afflicted would need to make a pilgrimage to St. Vitus' shrine. The city council initially rejected this plan, opting instead to follow the guild of physicians' advice. But after the guild's plan had immensely backfired, the council warmed to the idea for a religious solution. On August 10th, they held a mass in the Ancien Fro chapel, where they told the residents that every inflicted dancer would be forced to take a pilgrimage to St. Vitus' shrine, that the inflicted person's guild would be responsible to get them there, and to get them there by almost any means necessary. This journey from Strasbourg to St. Vitus' shrine would be a 3-day-long journey, and those struck with the disease would need to be tied down, preventing them from thrashing about. The dancers would then begin the pilgrimage to the shrine, located in a cave west of Saverne. When the dancers arrived, they would be taken to the altar, which was likely a wooden carving of Vitus. Here, they would offer up a single pfennig, the currency at the time, and would be put into red shoes. These shoes would have been subjected to holy water and consecrated oil. In their hands, crosses would be placed. During the ritual, incense would be burning and Latin chants would be spoken by the priests who would have accompanied the afflicted. This ritual, however strange it may seem to us now, did manage to cure those with dancing mania. When this message reached the council in Strasbourg, they began sending more and more of those inflicted with the disease to the shrine. In just a couple of weeks, everyone who had been infected were now cured, and the dancing plague of 1518 was officially over. But what was left in the disease's wake? Historical records prove that this plague really did happen, but what is unclear is if the disease was truly deadly. Many of the records from these dates don't explicitly mention there being a death toll, but it doesn't mean that there weren't any. Some of the later records mention the possibility of 15 deaths per day, making the death toll possibly in the hundreds. The dancing plague of 1518 was an extremely strange phenomenon, and it seems strange how this had never happened before. Except, that's not true. This had happened many times before. Dancing mania, choreomania, tarantism, St. John's dance, St. Vitus' dance. They all mean the same thing. Groups of people outlandishly dancing at the same time. They can't stop it. They don't know why they do it, and no one knows why either. First appearing in the 7th century, dancing mania would be cited through the centuries. Sometimes it would be harmless. Others would end in disaster. In 1278, approximately 200 individuals dancing on a bridge spanning the River Meuse caused its collapse. Similar to the events in Strasbourg, they were taken to a chapel that was dedicated to St. Vitus and were successfully healed. Following a rather large outbreak in 1374 at Aachen, dancing plagues were seen all over Europe, in towns such as Basel, Bernburg, Cologne, Flanders, Franconia, Hainaut, Metz, Tongeren, Utrecht, and Zurich. Cases of dancing mania would peak during the 1300s to the 1500s, but for some reason, they had completely stopped by the 17th century. It seems strange that this social phenomenon could have been so common, only for it to disappear entirely. What made these outbreaks stop all of a sudden? And right now is when we should start investigating theories on why these outbreaks were even occurring. Food poisoning. It's something we've all experienced at some point in our lives, and we all know it sucks. But typically, when we think about food poisoning, we remember a time when we ate something bad and then probably threw up for a bit, before eventually feeling better. In these cases, we were probably infected with bacteria or a virus, such as Salmonella, E. coli, norovirus, or Campylobacter. But if there was food poisoning involved with dancing mania, it wouldn't be any of these culprits. It would be something different. Something we don't really worry about now. It's a fungus called ergot, and it's found on rye, a grain that is used in flour, bread, and beer. When the plant becomes infected, the fungus replaces the cereal grain with a dark fungal body, known as sclerotium, where it produces alkaloids. These alkaloids are what causes ergotism, although at this time it would be called St. Anthony's fire. symptoms of ergotism can be categorized into two types: gangrenous and convulsive. Gangrenous symptoms typically manifest in the fingers and toes, categorized by swelling, peeling, and eventual loss of sensation, leading to tissue death. On the other hand, convulsive symptoms encompass headaches, nausea, fever, spasms, seizures, and it seems pretty evident which set of symptoms might be associated with dancing mania, but how did so many people become infected with it? Well, considering this occurred during the Middle Ages, when quality control was not yet a standard practice, outbreaks could easily occur. Farmers would cultivate crops and use contaminated rye to make bread. In small towns with limited bread sources, just one tainted field could infect the entire population, inducing a state of mania and potentially leading to non-stop dancing. However, this theory has its shortcomings. Firstly, the symptoms of ergot poisoning don't precisely align with dancing mania. Prolonged dancing accompanied by fever and vomiting seems far-fetched and isn't documented in historical records describing dancing mania. Additionally, individuals react differently to ergot poisoning, making it unlikely for everyone to share the same impulse to dance. Furthermore, the absence of gangrenous symptoms in historical accounts challenges the idea of widespread ergot poisoning among hundreds of people. Finally, not all affected towns cultivated rye, further complicating the ergotism explanation. While ergotism may explain isolated cases of dancing mania, it doesn't appear to be the primary cause, leaving the truth to still be discovered. Alright, so there are a few other theories that try to explain what dancing mania was, but there isn't as much information with most of these, so this section will be brief. One idea states that the dancers were all in a cult, and that the dancing was an initiation ceremony or ritual. And sure, there may be a couple of events during this time where this was the cause, but all of them? It doesn't seem likely. Plus, it stated how the dancers explicitly didn't want to keep dancing, and this kind of throws the cult theory out the window. Another idea involves hypnosis, with people being in a state of trance when they were dancing. Some even connect this idea with the cult theory, with the theory being that cult members would put the townspeople in a trance and then get them to dance. This would be interesting, but there's no mention of a cult in historical records, and it seems it would be hard to put such a strong trance on entire towns. Another idea involves demonic possession, with demons possessing people and forcing them to dance. I guess it explains why the dancing seemed to stop after they went on a pilgrimage to what was basically an exorcism, but yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this one. With most of these propositions being unlikely, we'll need to keep searching. Most of these theories don't seem to be panning out just right. Maybe we'll need to examine the culture and geopolitics at the time. If we take a look at the important events during the Middle Ages, we'll see one crucial event that changed the world forever. The Black Death. Between the years 1346 to 1353, the Black Death was estimated to have killed 50% of Europe's population. And even though the main Black Death pandemic would end in 1353, many smaller outbreaks would occur over the years, spreading fear into the hearts of many. This would likely induce a lot of stress to those who were living in this time period, and cause them to act irrationally at times. The idea shouldn't even seem surprising, as we've all seen firsthand what reactions a pandemic can cause. And while the 2020 coronavirus pandemic was a nightmare, the Black Death was much worse. Is it easier now to connect the dots and see how people during the 14th through 16th centuries could have acted much more radically? I truly think it is. If we look at when most of the outbreaks occurred, we can see that there would typically be a plague right before the outbreaks. The plague would be devastating by itself, but would also generate economic hardship, creating even more stress. Another point is how strong some people's religious beliefs were. If they truly believed that they would be cursed by St. Vitus if they were sinful, it would add even more pressure on them. People would be so stressed and uncertain about their life that they'd dance either to relieve their stress or because they thought they were being cursed. And more people would join them to also release their stress, resulting in the strange, almost ritualistic dance of death. But would this idea be so universal that many groups completely unrelated to each other all be doing the exact same thing? Historians have also seemed to explain this too. You see, most of the outbreaks of dancing mania took place adjacent to commercial pathways, areas that would have been the most likely to hear about the dancing mania outbreaks. Meaning, a large portion of dancing mania could really have just been other people hearing about it, and then people, whether consciously or not, would begin to dance, starting another outbreak. With this information in hand, we are one step closer to understanding these strange occurrences. We know how it initially started, and we know how the idea spread, but why would so many other people join in? It's understandable that maybe a few people would just randomly start dancing, but why an entire town? Well, there's an explanation for this too, and it's pretty common to still see today. It's called herd mentality. Merriam-Webster defines it as the tendency of the people in a group to think and behave in ways that conform with others in the group rather than as individuals. This concept has been heavily researched, and what scientists have found is that this mentality causes our brains to lose a lot of their critical thinking skills and independent thought. Have you ever looked at a popular social media trend and thought, that looks super dumb and dangerous, why would they ever do that? Well, what you're seeing is an example of herd mentality, and it perfectly describes what we're seeing with the dancing plagues. Okay, so examining the evidence, this is my take on what was really going on at the time. Dancing mania was a mass psychogenic illness, largely occurring at times where people were extremely stressed due to a variety of reasons, such as ongoing plagues, economic hardship, and strong religious fervor. A particularly strong outbreak would occur in Aachen in 1374. The story of what occurred would spread along trading routes and kickstart a period of time where dancing mania outbreaks would reach its peak. However, as time came and went, stories of dancing mania became less talked about, cultures and societies changed, and people slowly found other ways for coping with their stress. Now, dancing plagues are just fascinating moments in history, but they aren't being practiced or seen anymore. It's just a dark moment in history. And with this, our journey has come to an end. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see others like it in the future, please consider subscribing. And as always, if you have a disturbing moment in history that you'd like to be covered, please share it in the comment section below,